Hello. Hello, my name is Paloma López, and I'm the Education Manager at the Indian Arts Research Center here at the School for Advanced Research. Thank you all so much for joining us, both in person and virtually, to learn from and celebrate our 2025 Ronald and Susan Dubin Native Artist Fellow, Keith Edaakie. We wanted to extend a special thank you to the Dubin family and the Maxwell Hanrahan Foundation for their continued support of our Native Artist Fellowship program. It was really lovely to have Keith and his family here on campus this summer to visit the vaults with him and his wife Leanne and to learn about his incredible artistic process. We'll definitely miss seeing him around when he leaves us. Keith Edaakie from Zuni has been working full-time as a mixed media artist for the past 9 years. His work is at once representative of Zuni culture and traditions and in conversation with contemporary concerns and subject matter. Apart from his work as an artist, Keith has made his mark as an educator, having served as a Zuni language and cultural instructor at Zuni Middle School, an artist mentorship instructor for the Zuni Youth Enrichment Project, and an art activity leader at the Zuni Youth Enrichment Project Summer Camp. Keith has shown work at the Heard Museum, Guild Indian Fair Market, the Autry American Indian Arts Festival, and the Santa Fe Indian Market, among others. And he will be showing next weekend at SWAYA, and his booth is on Palace. So if you're around, check it out, go by and say hello to Keith. So I'll turn things over to Keith Edaakie.
Kishi ko dona ondeoki. Ho Keith Edaakie na ho dona shi ko den kolok da gawan chale. Ho maatla shina achi Rayland da Patty Edaakie achi leshina. Hello, good evening. My name is Keith Edaakie. I am from the Pueblo of Zuni. My clans, the way I introduce myself, I am a child. I lost my train of thought here. I am a Turkey clan and the child of a Sandhill Crane. And wanted to thank you guys all for coming to here today. Some of the things I definitely want to do is share a lot of the history and art, both personally and from my community. And so really thankful to see everybody here and thankful to everybody that has logged on to listen to me talk, some random res kid from Zuni Pueblo. So first, I definitely want to thank the School of Advanced Research for creating this kind of opportunity for me to be here to share my knowledge and my understanding of the way, the things that I remember. Definitely big thank you to Susan Dubin for sponsoring this incredible opportunity. I think speaking for all artists, this is basically a dream job. To get paid to do your art is something that I definitely enjoy. It definitely gave me a lot of perspective, gave me a lot of insight, and which I'm going to share. Definitely want to thank Paloma and all of the staff that I've encountered here while spending my time with this fellowship. They're very helpful. They're very positive, and it's a nice positive energy when you encounter everybody here. So for me, art has always been around me. Coming from multi-generational artists, my parents are silversmiths, their parents were silversmiths, and I decided to become a painter. Growing up as a kid, I was always drawing, I was always doodling, painting, doing whatever I can. But in the beginning, my art was just kind of more or less, I would say, a copycat artist. You know, I would see things around my community and I would replicate it, not truly understanding the importance of what I was creating or not really truly understanding what I was creating. I just saw something pretty cool and say, hey, I want to make that. And so from my childhood all the way up until I would say my early 20s, that was basically what I was doing. It definitely helped me refine my skills as an artist, but again, I truly didn't understand what I was creating. And so a lot of times when people will ask about my art, I kind of give them general idea of what it is. I kind of know what it is, but I really didn't know what it meant. It was up until, I would say, the year of 2001. I just got back from Phoenix. I went to school out there for about a year and a half. And that's when my first daughter was born. And school wasn't working for me at that time. And so it was basically, hey, you got to find a job. And it was just by luck. I was a kid, basically, having a kid, a little wet behind the ears. I've met a friend that actually went to school with me in Phoenix. He was back in our community, and he just came home for a quick visit, and I happened to run into him by chance. And he was asking me, hey, so what are you doing? I was all like, I'm trying to look for a job. I got to support my family. And he tells me, hey, well, my dad's hiring. You want to come talk to him? And he and I have been friends for a really long time. Like when we were kids, we would always play together. So I knew who his father was. And so like, yeah, let's go. And he worked at a substance abuse counseling center. At that time, they were looking for traditional educators, looking at a holistic approach as far as treatment and education, re-education for a lot of our community members, you know, who were having difficulties with substance use. And so we went in there and we talked to him and said, we're looking for people to talk about our culture, our history, and our language. And he says to me, do you know your language, your culture, and your history? And being the desperate position that I was of needing a job, I said, yeah, I do. I did a little bit, but not completely. And I think he was one of the first persons that gave me a chance. When that happened, I worked as a cultural educator, a traditional mentor. That first year there, I worked with several of our elders from our community. And they had these little sessions where they would talk about the history, their culture, and the language, and even some of their own personal histories, their personal stories. So the first year that I was there at the program, you know, I basically felt like I was one of the clients listening and taking in everything that they were sharing. And it was really wonderful to hear. They had so much knowledge. They shared so much history with me. They shared so much to make me understand, like, oh, that's what I'm creating. Oh, so that's what that means. Everything around me that I saw every single day started to click into place. It's like, oh, so that's why we do this. This is why we do that. And so when it came to a point where I was there for about maybe 4 years, and every single day it was something that I enjoyed, something that I went to work happy, actually. I think that was my first job that I enjoyed because I got to work with these individuals. I got to listen to them. But after 4 years, there was a changeover where they actually had to leave the program. And some of the counselors there were like, okay, you've been listening, you've been kind of participating in the back. They're not here anymore to present these stories and these ideas, these histories, this important information. So basically, I was kind of pushed to the front. All right, your turn. And I can remember the first time presenting our migration history. And I was very thankful because it just came to me, and I was able to express it just the way they were able to express it. And when I was done, those counselors were very, I guess, like a young kid being proud. They were very happy to see that I was able to continue the history, that I was able to continue to share what they have been sharing for the past 4 years. And so moving from there, I decided to go teach at the middle school. Well, I didn't actually decide that. It kind of decided for me. And that's just kind of how things sometimes just kind of went for me. It was interesting because when I left the recovery center, the substance abuse counseling center, I came to a crossroad, and so like, what's next for me? My first thought, we had our first daughter, my first daughter with my current wife. But I came to a point where like, what do I do now? I was actually in the process of applying for a culinary program in Albuquerque. And so that's what I want to do. I was like, I want to be a chef. I want to cook. I want to learn how to cook. And so I was in the process of doing that. There was a call that came in. It was the director of the bilingual program in our school district. And she called and said that, hey, we need Zuni language teachers. You have a wealth of knowledge that we want you to share with our youth. And basically said, if you want, the job is yours. You don't have to apply, you don't have to do anything. We just need you to be here. And so I was still undecided. So like, I really want to become a chef, but this is something that's going to be guaranteed. This is something that's going to be here to help support my family. And so ultimately I decided to become a Zuni language teacher. And the way they hooked me actually is they told me, you're going to be working with the elementary kids, these little 4-year-old, 5-year-olds, all the way up to 5th grade. You'll be able to work with them. You'll be working with the teacher. I was like, okay. First day of staff orientation, they started introducing the new teachers to the different school sites. The elementary teachers were introduced, and all of them were introduced. And then they said, here's the Zuni middle school teachers. And I was all like, wait, you didn't call my name. And so they started calling the Zuni middle school teachers, and I'm sitting there like, please don't call my name. And sure enough, they said, Keith Edaakie, the new Zuni language teacher for 6th and 7th grade. And my initial thought was like, oh man, what did I get myself into? Because I remember my middle school days. And I remember what, I guess I can say personally, what I put my teachers through. And so I taught for about 4 years. I was basically just kind of thrown into a classroom. And that was a really steep learning curve for me. I've done presentations before, but I've never actually had to prep for a classroom. Nobody really teaches you classroom management skills. They just basically throw you to the wolves and hope you survive. And so for the first 2 years, that's basically what I did. I survived. Towards the end, I started really learning and started really incorporating a lot of my art in the classroom. Because with 6th grade and 7th grade, it's that time of, it's that age where if you don't hook them, they're gonna take over your classroom. And so I had to figure out a way to connect with these kids. And it was through art. I remember always being up on my chalkboard, drawing images, writing notes, and it worked. But the thing that happened is, the end of the day, I would erase all of that and it would be gone. And so towards the end of my teaching career, I decided, I need to do something that's going to create something more permanent. We had resources in our bilingual program, but there was not that many that I could utilize. And so one of the things I wanted to do was not just for the school district, but for a community, basically anybody, create these resources that people can use. And so from there, my art was created with more intent, to where, all of these stories that I heard from these elders, some of them that are no longer around with us, it was my idea to create art that was going to share their stories. It's not mine. I'm just taking it in and passing them along. Hopefully someone from my community will listen to these stories and they will continue just like I did. And so from there, I started creating art, using a lot of that history, using a lot of that culture, the language that I listened to from those elders for that 10 years that I was there at the recovery center. Practicing, sharing, practicing talking to our community. And so from there, I decided to take on art full time. And it's actually been a really interesting journey. I wouldn't say it's all been smooth sailing. There's definitely been some headaches. There's definitely been some successes, but it's something that I would definitely not trade for anything in the world. I think for me, this is my calling. This is who I am. I can proudly say I am a Zuni artist, and I will always be a Zuni artist. And it's just been recent that we've actually gone to different art shows. Santa Fe Indian Market. There's a art market in Oklahoma that we go visit. And then one of the cool things is you meet really interesting people. I think one of the things that we enjoy, my wife and I, is that when you go around to these art shows, you start to see a lot of the same people traveling with you. And we've made friends with a lot of these people. And it's nice that, my wife is always say, oh, we're gonna go see our art show family. We're gonna go see this person. So a lot of times when we do have a minute or two, we will always go out and chat with our fellow artists. We've made a lot of friends. We made a lot of connections doing different art. So these are a few photos. The one in the middle is actually myself and my father. At that art show, I think that was one of the best moments that both he and I both got best of class awards. So he got best of 3D, and then I got best of 2D for that art show. And so that was a really nice moment. This is us at Santa Fe Indian Market, my wife and I, with some really awesome people at the end. And I think with these connections, it definitely opens up a lot of opportunities. And I think with that, this is how I was able to come here. Some of the artists that we talked to talked about the fellowships here at SAR and some of the opportunities that are out there. And I've heard of these opportunities. I've known of them for a few years. This one in particular always missed the deadline. As an artist, the artist's life, it's sometimes chaotic and hectic, and there's like a million things coming at you at once. And so a lot of times, it's like, I'm gonna apply for this, I'm gonna try for this, and I end up missing the deadline. Actually, when I applied for this, I think I submitted my application at the very last minute on the very last day that they were accepted. But I was able to get it in, and I was accepted. I think one for me is that things happen for a reason. Things point us in different ways, like running into my friend. There was an instant where I was ready to go back home, but something told me, hey, wait. And it was that time that I actually saw my friend. If I just went home, I would have never met or bumped into him, and I would have probably been home still looking for a job. And I would never have met and talked with those others that I did for that time. And so, I definitely take these opportunities, and I appreciate all of the things that happen, because they just don't happen. Sometimes you do make things happen, but when it's destiny, things just kind of fall into place. And I think that was just one of the things that, I appreciate it here. And even our first morning here, after we moved in, got the house situated, we had a really cool visitor. This is just outside the kitchen window into a little back patio area. And so we were about to have breakfast, and then my daughters are like, hey, there's something out there. And so we look, and we see this deer just kind of chilling out, hanging out. And for us, this is something that's a really good sign. And so it was really cool to see, very humbling, that, this is meant to be. And so it was really, from then on, it was just like, take as much as you can. Bring in as much as you can. Take full advantage of whatever opportunity is in front of you, because you never know if this is going to come back or not. And so that was something that was really cool to see. And it definitely gave me a lot of perspective. It gave me a lot of insight. it gave me a lot of resources I wouldn't have as a artist on your own. One of the things that I was very privileged to was visiting the collection here. If you've been to the collection, there's a lot of valuable items in there, a lot of history, a lot of knowledge that have been kept for many, many years. And so this was something that's not anything that you can put any amount of money to. This experience for me is truly priceless. This is something that I'm always going to remember, and it's really cool to know that there are resources like this available for not just myself, but anybody that's interested in it. And so I spent the whole day with my wife, with Paloma and other the staff at the collections, just looking at all the different pottery, which where I get a lot of my inspiration. Because, well, like I said, those things that clicked, those pottery designs started making sense to me when I started learning the history, when I started learning all of the things that happened a long time ago. A lot of these started clicking into place. And so this was something that I truly, truly appreciate and use to tell my stories. And so we spent about a good morning looking through a lot of that collections. At the end of lunch, by lunchtime, my head started to hurt because it's just sensory overload. There's just a lot to take in just that short amount of time. But I was very thankful to be able to spend that time inside the collection. And so while using this, I wanted to create a type of art that would make me stand out. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have been to the Santa Fe India Market. A lot of tremendous artists, talented artists, and just like the collections, it's kind of sensory overload because of just amount of art that you see throughout that day. And a lot of times you tend to get overlooked because there's just too much things around. And so I had to figure out something that's gonna help me stand out. It was about maybe 2 years ago that I had this idea of going back to my childhood. Growing up in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, there was a lot of car shows in New Mexico. And I always liked to attend those. And just looking at a lot of those cars, they're artworks in themselves. These paint jobs that you see, they're very intricate, a lot of detail, a lot of shininess. I think I like that shininess. One of those others that I worked with, he was also an artist too. And I remember one of the things that he was always saying is that if you want to be an artist, you can't be afraid of color. And so I think that I always took that into heart. And I started creating art kind of based on these lowrider art, I guess you could say, using my traditional imagery and the history and the ideas. And this is probably one of the first pieces that I created. So I didn't have a lot of resources at that time. I really didn't have a lot of know-how at that time, but I wanted to replicate some of those cars. And so what I did is I improvised. As an artist, a lot of times you gotta use what you have around you. At that time, I found a can of glitter spray paint that you get at Walmart, those rattle cans. And basically what I did is I covered the whole skateboard with that glitter spray paint, put a whole bunch of clear coat on it to seal it down, and then transparent paints, what they call candy paints, to paint on top of it. So I used the airbrush and created the designs and created the color on this. My intent when I came here to SARS was to really work on this type of art, to increase or kind of get more knowledgeable of how to create that art. So one of the things I did was doing a lot of research. For me, when I went to school in Phoenix, I didn't finish with a degree, but throughout the years, I like to always tell people I got a degree from YT. And there I was like, where's that? The University of YouTube. A lot of times, as an artist, you figure things out. A lot of times you run into these obstacles where you're trying to figure it out, but you can't. And there's a lot of resources out there, and YouTube is actually one of those that I use to help figure things out, and which we're on right now, actually. And so first couple of weeks here was researching. How do I do this? What do I need to do? What do I need to create these really nice works of art? And so one of the things that I first had to do is build this guy here. So I actually created a spray booth. And this will help enclose all of the oversprays. It will vent all the fumes out. And so that's me right there in the center. I'm actually just posing. This was earlier this morning. But I will have an air respirator, my headphones on, because I had a smaller compressor, so that compressor went off often. But this is something that I had to create my works of art. Originally, I wanted to create this on my own. Like, as an artist, I wanted to figure this out and say, like, okay, I'm gonna do it this way, I'm gonna do it that way. But there's a lot of innovators out there. There's a lot of DIYers out there, and a lot of people who've already done this before. And so my thought was, I was already 2 weeks into my fellowship, is all like, why recreate the wheel when there's already people who've done it before? And so actually what I did is I bought a plan for building this spray booth. And that helped tremendously. So all I had to do was go to a local hardware store, buy all the parts, and then cut them to piece, and then put this thing together. And so this is probably the first thing that I actually did while I was here on my fellowship. And it just kind of goes to show that, you know, anything's possible. I think for me as an artist, I tend to overthink a lot sometimes. As like, what if it's this way? What if it's that way? What if I do it this way? Or what if I get this instead of that? And I think at that point in my fellowship, it was definitely an adjustment. Coming here to a new location, new surroundings, new environment. I was used to my old studio. I needed to figure out or just get acquainted to this space. And 2 months, in my head, it was like, that's a long time. 2 weeks into it, it's all like, oh man, 2 months isn't a long time. And so one of the things I had to tell myself is, don't overthink it, just do it. And so I think building this spray booth was one of those milestones that kind of got the ball rolling. And it really definitely helped after that. So now it's just me putting my head down and getting some work done. And so I'm really excited to show some of the work that I created here. But one of the things I definitely wanted to do was share a little bit about that history that those elders shared with me, and share a little bit about the Zuni people and where we're coming from. So one of the things that I was told is our history starts at the Grand Canyon. Our people emerged from the Grand Canyon and migrated place to place. And one of the very sacred sites that we do have is Ribbon Falls down at the Grand Canyon. This is considered our place of emergence. And this is one of those experiences that I'm very thankful for. About 2010, 2011, a group of 10 Zuni artists actually traveled along the Colorado River down the Grand Canyon. We actually got to visit a lot of these ancestral sites that were very important to the Zuni people. And from that trip, we were able to create art that were considered maps. It was called the Zuni Map Art Project. And so these artists created paintings of these ancestral sites and basically used them as maps to identify, which sites are important to the Zuni people. And so Ribbon Falls was one of those places that we visited. And so again, this is about 15 years ago. Yeah, I'm one of those people in there. I'll give you a chance to guess which one am I. That was probably, that was 15 years ago, about 40 pounds lighter. But the one at the far left and the tank top, that's me in the black tank top. So that was one of the really neat experiences that I actually got to participate. One, not only just visiting these ancestral sites, but to share ideas, share again with a lot of the elders that went with us. I think that's something that I definitely enjoyed, was hearing these stories. And it wasn't always about the history, even personal stories that they had to share growing up. Things they saw, things they did is something that was really important to me to hear and to listen. One of the other signs that I forgot to share was when I got here, I was actually doing research for one of the paintings that I was doing. And I was looking for an old image of the mission church that we have in Zuni. And I found one, and it took me to an archival site. And on that site, there was other little resources that kind of popped up at the bottom. And I saw there was these audio recordings they did in the 1950s. And so I listened to one, and it was about it was a recording about a lady who was learning pottery from her grandma. And just the way she spoke in the broken English, it was cool to hear. It's like it reminded me, listen to my grandparents talk. It reminded me of those elders talk because English wasn't their first language. And so when they spoke, it was this broken English that it was spoken with an accent. And so I heard that, and then another resource popped up. And when I clicked it, it just said 51-year-old gentleman talking about personal stories. And when I clicked it, it was actually those same stories I heard when I was working at the recovery center. So I actually got emotional listening to it because it reconnected me. And again, it was those signs that show me you're on the right path. You're here, you're meant to be here. And so again, going back to those stories that they shared was definitely something that was important. And as they migrated, there was a lot of these trials and tribulations that they faced. And one of the things that actually happened, this is one of my older pieces that I did. I think it's basic, 2015 probably. And it talks about how our people separated. They were presented with these two eggs, and they were told that you choose one or the other, and whatever hatches from these eggs is going to lead you to where you're meant to be. And so you will see those two eggs at the bottom. And so our Zuni people, I guess we like colorful things. We chose the colorful egg, and then the other group of people were given this kind of dull color egg. And then when it hatched, the colorful egg, you can kind of follow the swirl. It was actually the crow. And that one led us to present-day Zuni in New Mexico. And that's why we have a lot of crows in our community as well. The doll egg, when that hatched, actually hatched a scarlet macaw. And that macaw actually led those people down south, Mexico, Central America, even down as far south as Central America. And so that was some of the history that was shared with me. And this is going to be something that's going to be really important. But that was just a little bit of the history. If I wanted to share all of the things that they taught me, we'd probably be here for 2-3 days. But I know we only have an hour. But one of the things that I wanted to do was address a lot of the things that have been going on. When I submitted my application, that was January of 2025. Yeah, January of 2025 is when I submitted my application. And so when I wrote my proposal, I wanted to talk about a lot of the social issues that have been going on. There was a new incoming administration that was newly elected, and a lot of the rhetoric, a lot of the things that were spoken was kind of scary. And so when January came around, fast forward to now, a lot of those have really escalated. A lot of those have really become kind of scary, not just for Indigenous people, but just people in general. So one of the things, definitely social media, good and bad. Good because you stay connected. Good because it's able to share information. Sometimes information that can be overwhelming, can take over a lot sometimes. And I remember this happening one time through social media. I believe 2016, we all heard about what was happening at Standing Rock, of all the pipeline and everything. And I remember on Facebook, on other social media sites, all of these videos that I would see of what's happening at Standing Rock. And I would see this kind of taking it in to a point where it basically made me irritable. I actually got to a point where I wasn't a pleasant person to be around, I guess, because I was taking this in but not letting it out. And so my wife and I said, we need to do something. Luckily, there was a young gentleman, his name is Riley, and he's the gentleman in the green vest. He did this run where he started in, I believe, Flagstaff, Arizona, and he wanted to raise awareness for the things that were happening at Standing Rock. And basically what these young group of boys did is they did a relay race, basically, day and night. They're from, I believe, I can't, either it was Flagstaff or Phoenix, but they started from one of those sites, and they ran all the way to Kayenta, Arizona. And our group of community runners heard whim of this and decided to help this young gentleman raise this awareness. And so what happened is they ran from their start, ran all the way to Kayenta, Arizona. From Kayenta, our group of runners ran from Kayenta all the way to Blanding, Utah. And this was a relay run that we did basically day and night. So we had some runners running through the night. And it was our way to, one, again, spread that awareness, but also for me to do something physical to release that tension that I was bringing in by watching these videos. And so it's something that we all need sometimes. We need some kind of outlet. We need some kind of things to let go of all these tensions, because if we don't, it's gonna stay and linger with us. And so you can see me, that's, again, 40 pounds lighter, probably, me running. But it was something that I truly enjoyed. We got to see a lot of these scenery. We were definitely, we were met with different things, I guess. Some agree with what we were doing, some saying this is not important, but it was a way for me to help. It was a way for me to bring awareness to that situation. And so that's something that we did. Fast forward to today, we see a lot of policies being created around immigration, and even terrifying for us. I remember when we were getting ready for the Herd Indian Art Market, we were hearing all these stories, watching videos again of these deportations happening kind of unjustly, and kind of, it put us in a situation where before we went, there was even posts and there was announcements made. If you're going off the reservation, make sure you have this document, and that document, just in case. And it was kind of scary to think about. It was scary to think that this is the kind of world that we're living in. One of the things that I see, I follow a lot of the politics a lot just to stay in the know. And I see a lot of things changing into direction that is kind of terrifying. One of the things that I was brought up is a lot of the traditional values and a lot of the cultural values that we were taught. One of the things that we were taught is the earth is considered our mother. And so this is a painting I did, maybe 2016. I don't know, I had an obsession with painting eyes. But basically representing the earth as the mother. In the background, you see Cliff Palace at Mesa Verde. And in the reflection, you would kind of see what it would look like when it was all intact. But one of the things that we were always told is the earth is our mother. And at no point do we have the right to own our mother. At no point do we have the right to tell people where they can go or where they cannot go. And so one of the things that I want to do as an artist is to bring these cultural teachings, these cultural values of being a respectable person, being respectful to one another, having compassion as a human being, having that decency to treat each other as human beings versus what we want to do based on the color of our skin. I remember in 2019, I created this painting. It's the same separation of the people. I believe when the first administration happened, there was a lot of these rhetorics again. One of the things I wanted to do was create this image of how the people separated, and address one of the main important things. A lot of people that are considered illegal here were actually indigenous to this area. And one that we do know is that our history talks about that. Our history tells us how these people separated, that we traveled as one group and then separated in our different direction because, like I said, here, I was meant to be here. Those people were meant to go there. The trade routes that happened, even after we separated, continue. A lot of our cultures, a lot of our traditions incorporate the macaw feathers. And then you can see the macaw actually carrying copper bells. Copper bells were found down south that were actually traded up here into this region. Our area had turquoise, so you could see the crow actually carrying a strand of turquoise. Pottery, those kind of things were all traded openly and freely, and there was no imaginary line to say, hey, you can't come here. If you come here, you're considered illegal. It was all there with good intent. It was there as a harmonious system that, we were able to move freely, that we were able to share the resources that we had. We didn't have everything that we needed to survive. We had to outsource different things. We had to rely on other communities to provide a need that we had. It was cooperation. It was community that was built. Now, when you see the ideas is that we're supposed to do this by ourselves. We can't include other people. We need to do this by ourselves. But I think when we do that, we start breaking apart these relationships. We start breaking up these connections. And I think New Mexico is one of those really good examples of how diverse this community is, of how rich this area is. You can hear one person speaking multiple languages. You see so much imagery around us, not just from one culture, not just from one community. You see a blend of these communities. You see a blend of these images. You see a blend of all of these things happening. And I think that's what makes it even more beautiful, is that we're not identifying ourselves as just one person. We're identifying as all people. And that's something that we're told. This morning, when we do our prayers, we don't just pray for ourselves. We pray for everybody, regardless if we don't like them or not, regardless if we may be having a grudge with a person for the past 10 years or not. This is something that we are taught to do, is that we don't do things that benefits just us. We do things that benefit all of us. And I think with this administration, we kind of see that being torn. We see this being steered in a direction where that's not going to happen. We see a lot of these things trying to be erased. We see a lot of our history trying to be taken off. But I think one of the things that we want to do and want to share is a lot of these people. And I'm not just going to say indigenous people. We as people are very resilient. We as people are very persistent, regardless of what needs or what they're trying to erase, regardless of how they want to divide. We as a people will continue to make those connections. We as a people will continue to tell our story, our whole story, the good side and the bad side. We will continue to tell those. And I think one of the things for our indigenous brothers and sisters, that to know that this is their homelands as well. This is where they belong to as well. They set foot, and I don't want to say they set foot here first, but they have a right to belong here too as well. This is one of the pieces that I created that I actually donated to the collections here. It's of parrots. It's something that connects us. So on the left, you'll see a pottery design from La Laguna, Acoma Pueblo, of the parrot design. And then on the right, you see a parrot design from down south. And then up at the top and the bottom, this kind of click while I was creating this, is a pottery design from Zuni, and it actually looks like a parrot design. It has similarities with the designs in the front. And then you'll see petroglyphs of parrots that are found around the southwest region. And so this is something that I definitely wanted to share, that, with these whole policies, again, policies can be enacted. There could be things happening, but bringing awareness of what truly is first and foremost, that a lot of these people, again, that are considered illegal are actually indigenous to this area. Things that they bring us resources that we need. Things that they provide enrich our lives versus degrading our lives. And so those are some of the things that I wanted to create to really tell those stories. These are some of the things that I wanted to share creating this art. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about this. I was having a nice conversation earlier before the talk start of skateboard. It's all like, skateboard art has become a really popular trend among Native American artists, well, artists in general. But primarily you'll see them with a lot of Native American artists. And if you do go to the Santa Fe Indian Market, you're bound to see skateboard art. Well, because I'm gonna be there too. But I was fortunate enough to grow in a time where a lot of things were new. I saw the evolution of a lot of things. I can actually say I know what an 8-trick is, that moved up to a cassette tape, that moved up to a CD player, that moved up to MP3 players, and then moving up to what we now have on our phones. I saw that evolution. I was able to understand it. I remember in my, I would say, wowo, which is a Zuni term for grandmother, my paternal grandmother. I remember in her home flopping out this big laser disc and watching Planet of the Apes. That now transitioned to VHS, that transitioned to our DVDs, and now we just stream everything. We don't buy anything anymore. I was able to see the internet being born, and I've seen it blossom to what it is now. And that gave me a lot of perspective and a lot of understanding. My parents, a generation before, they still call me when they say, hey, how do you work this thing? How do you do this thing? Blessed and privileged to understand both. That I was able to grow up speaking my Zuni language first, and then learning English in the classroom. I was blessed to grow up in a traditional home where these values were taught, but also understand a lot of these mainstream ideas. And one of the things that I do with my skateboard art is finding that balance, because you got to have balance riding a skateboard. I used to skateboard when I was probably in my early 20s. After you have a big fall when you get older, it gets a little bit harder to get up. So I decided to paint on them instead. But when this movement started, there was a gentleman that would talk about the skateboard art. And we actually had an exhibit. It was called the Pivot exhibit. And I think he explained it really well. And so what he means by pivot is when you pivot, when you look at one direction, you'll see your tradition and your culture and your values. You pivot and you turn and you see mainstream media, ideas, all of these things, the modern amenities that we have. It's not that we can escape it. As much as I would love to see how we were 100 years ago, thriving without a lot of influence, it's not possible anymore because we are so immersed with it. Our kids are more technical with technology than we are. You see 2-year-olds working a really complicated remote that you can barely understand. It's not something that we can get away from. It's always going to be around. And so with skateboard art is using the best of both, not trying to put one away and rely on the other primarily. You have to do both now. And I think with the skateboard art, that's basically what encapsulates is Native American life today, where you take something non-traditional, like a skateboard, and we tell our traditional stories on it. And that's a way for our youth to understand the importance of who we are. It's because our youth are the ones that are going to continue these stories. Our youth are the ones that are going to be in my place when their time comes to retell these stories. And I want to make sure I give them as much resources. I want to make sure I give them as much information that I share and I know with them, because it would be selfish of me to keep all of that knowledge, all those elders share it with me to myself and say, this is mine. It's not. It's everybody's. And this is something that I wanted to do, was create these works of art on skateboards. One, it definitely catches the youth's attention. It's something they can relate to. And it helps me as an artist to push the boundaries as far as what I can do. Again, that conversation earlier I had, if I stuck to traditional art, I would be confined into these rules of traditional art, of having to do what traditional art is. Because if I don't, it's not considered traditional art anymore. But as a contemporary artist, as I want to say cutting edge artist, these are the boundaries I definitely want to keep pushing, but not losing the meaning, not losing the messages that I want to share. And so this is something that was created. This is something that I find dear to myself. And I appreciate you guys coming in here and listening. One thing I definitely want to leave with is that for me, learning, empathy, compassion is like throwing a stone in a puddle or a pond or a river or a lake. When you throw it in, it spreads out, and hopefully it traverses as far as you can. So hopefully I threw a big enough stone for you guys that it will traverse, and you'll be able to share as much as you can with what I shared with you guys today. So again, thank you. Appreciate everybody for being here. Appreciate, again, listening to some random kid from the Zuni reservation. Appreciate all the people who logged in. Thank you to everybody, to my families, always been supportive, to everybody that I encountered. Again, truly appreciate, and I'm so honored to be here to talk with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith, for a wonderful talk. We do have a couple of minutes if anybody has any questions for Keith. Here we go.
The first is a comment. I was a chef for 49 years. You made the right choice. Certainly one of the big Native artists working in that area of trying to resolve traditional aesthetics with contemporary culture is Jeffrey Gibson. Do you work with him at all?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, right now, my circle is kind of small to my community. I've never really branched out, but hopefully you name drop, so Jeffrey, reach out.
Do we have any other questions for Keith?
Are you using any digital art, like software?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that actually is a very big component of the work that I do. Again, using the best of what's out there. I use my computer, I use an iPad, I use software like Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and create my art through there. I know one of the things that was brought up when Susan visited my studio, or her studio that I'm using right now, was the comment of AI. And do I use AI to create my art? And I think that's a very, very valid question. You see AI growing stronger and bigger each day, to where I actually read somewhere that right now, 10% of the music is created by AI. About 10 years from now, 90% of our music is going to be created by AI. And that's kind of scary. And so one of the things that for me is that using the computer as a tool, and me being the artist versus the computer being the artist and I'm the tool. No pun intended, but in a way that, you know, that's something that's very important for me, is using something, digital art is definitely something that helps with the creative process. It's convenient, but it's also a headache sometimes when it's not working the way it's supposed to, but still being in control of what's being created. So again, using the computer more as a tool and me being the artist versus the other way around. But thank you. Yeah, so digital art is a big component of what I do, and you'll actually see several pieces that are all completely digital drawings rendered on the computer.
I think we can have one more question if there is one more.
Hi, thank you for that. So I just wanted to ask, my introduction to your work was through the cultural landscapes mapping project that you, or exhibition you participated in.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask a little bit about that experience of, you talked a little bit about education and externalizing cultural information, but also thinking about who was going to see those and how they would see them, and yeah, just your process with that.
Yeah, and I think that was something that, was needed. There's a lot of esoteric information that, was shared to me, that belongs to just certain people. There's even certain things that I don't know because I'm not part of those societies or those groups. And so when the map art project was created, it was a way for us to use those landscape paintings, those symbolism that each artist kind of had their own idea of how they would do it. And so one of the things for me personally when I created my map art project is I purposely put in things that, I understand and that our community can question, like, why did you put in this certain object? And I will be able to tell or retell our history or the importance of those items if they were allowed to hear those. If not, then, I will only share a certain amount with that. But I think one of the things our community wanted to do, not really ownership, but to really let people know the significance of these sites, the significance of these plants, animals, nature. All of those things are very important to not just Zuni people, but all indigenous people, all people. A lot of these things are very important. And so with that map art project, it was a really cool opportunity. I was just an up and coming artist at that time. Like that was like 15 years ago when that happened. But it was a really cool experience. I actually did 3 paintings for that map art project. There's actually a book. It's called The Zuni World. And it has the pictures of all the paintings, a little biography of each artist. And it's a really cool a resource for our community, for our people, and people in general to see what these artists created. And again, very talented artists that were part of these cohort. And it was really cool just to spend that time with a lot of these artists and share ideas. A lot of times as artists, we were always in our little silos working and never really having these outreach with other people to share ideas. And so when that project came along, I was able to connect with fellow artists who were two-dimensional artists. And so that was something that I really definitely appreciated.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again, Keith, for your wonderful talk. Thank you. All right. Thank you all so much for coming, and please join us at the Dubin studio where Keith has some of his work out to share with everyone. We also have snacks, so please find your way. Daniel here is going to lead you to the studio. Thank you again for coming.